And the reason it's a holy book is because it's telling the story of you. It's all about you.
Yeah.
So when you can read the New Testament, particularly the New Testament, from the first person singular, you start to get a sense of who you are.
And it was a psychedelic journey that I had when I realized that I was Jesus Christ.
What's up, Playmates? Welcome to Ford's Playground. I have got a very special treat for you on today's Psychonauts Podcast. A good friend, Chrystopher Hancock, is here, and he is known as the Astral Medium, and he's a fellow psychonaut and shaman and explorer of the unknown realms of the astral world. And it's our favorite conversation, so I said, come on, let's do a podcast and talk about it. So welcome to Ford's Playground and the Psychonauts Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to play today.
Yes.
And I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me, how did you get into this? What age did you get into this, and how did it all start?
Are you talking psychedelics or spirituality in general?
Let's start with spirituality in general.
Well, spirituality in general, from the time I was born, and I was raised on horror movies, and there were ghosts in my house, and that sort of thing pervaded my family line in many ways, especially on my father's side. My grandmother would talk about seeing ghosts and spirits, and my dad saw ships in the sky and always told me that extraterrestrials were real, and I grew up having some of that there, although horror movies traumatized me as much as I loved them. So Freddy Krueger didn't bother me, but anything with a ghost or a spirit or something like that really haunted me, no pun intended. But that kind of set the tone. And I also grew up watching Crossing Over with John Edwards, Lisa Williams, Long Island Medium with Teresa Caputo. Those were some of my favorite shows, and I always thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. And for those of you who are not aware, I'm an Astro Medium, which I'm an astrologer. I've loved astrology since I was a teenager and been studying it since I was a teenager. And I'm also a psychic medium, which was a dream come true when I finally admitted it to myself, even though a psychic told me 12 years ago that I was, but it went right over my head.
I just
actually didn't believe her almost. It was too good to be true. So I really refused a lot of it too, because I've been an actor and a singer and a dancer my whole life. I went to a performing arts high school. So my path was supposed to go somewhere else. And even as a child, I thought I was a witch. I was obsessed with witches and mermaids and mythological creatures and Harry Potter. Oh my God, when Harry Potter came along, I was obsessed. And these sorts of things set the tone for the work that I do now and the life that I'm living now. And so yeah, spirituality has always been there. I've always been interested, and I had my first spiritual awakening or spiritual opening, I would say, when I was 11 years old, and that also set the tone for the rest of my life as well. What happened at that point in the belief system that I created, and psychedelics came along around 20 years old. But once that came into my sphere, it was like I remembered. It was like meant to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, so do you think that did the astrology come first or the psychedelics come first?
Astrology. Oh my gosh.
Astrology came first.
Yes, I was I was 15, 16 years old, going around my theater class, telling people what their sun sign meant, and wowing people, because I would know things that weren't, I'd say, oh, your sun is in Aries, but I would say something that wasn't sun in Aries with it, and they would go, that's so me, and I'm like, that's not really Aries. I don't know how I knew that. The psychic stuff was coming in, so that's where Astro Medium came from, because I read astrology charts from a fifth dimensional perspective. I created 5D astrology, or downloaded it, if you will. But I read charts intuitively and psychically, and spirit shows me how those energies are showing up for them specifically, not what that book and that Wikipedia article said, which it's fine, because astrology is a built-up science and art over all these thousands of years, but reading it intuitively was there from the beginning. And I have a placement in my chart. It's Chiron conjunct the ascendant. So I'm an embodiment of Chiron energy, and he's the wounded healer. And Chiron rules the zodiac sign Virgo, and Virgo is all about plants and medicine and healing the body, diet, health. So I've always been obsessed with plants and health. I worked for luxury plant-based skincare lines. I was a health coach when I lived in Chicago, getting people on detox protocols. So psychedelics and plant medicine were just part of the package. It was going to happen because Chiron energy holds the energy. He is the shaman. And so plant medicine and plant spirits, they belong under that umbrella.
Wow,
They vibrate with the same frequency.
I mean, it's like a vitamin. It's a little bit more strong than a normal vitamin, but it's a vitamin.
But vita is life and vitality, and these bring you back to life.
Very good point.
Yeah, because life kills us, and these plant spirits who are in the realm of the dead bring us back to life.
Yeah, it's so true. It is a communion with the plants, right? It really is. Yeah. So, it's funny. Just like you, I was an atheist before a long time ago. Yeah, and I met a psychic who told me, she says, "You're very, very spiritual," and I was like, "Listen to this lady. She doesn't know what she's talking about." Boy.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Pegged me.
Yes.
Pegged me.
Yes.
Pegged me. And the astrology came from me way later. It came after doing many trips of psychedelics, and I was kind of like, oh, the astrology is spot on. It's all about fractality.
Yes.
And when you get fractality, it's obvious. Of course, of course, astrology is right.
Yes,
you know?
Fractality and the Kabbalah and Hermeticism and as above, so below. Once you understand time isn't linear and synchronicity, and you understand these concepts that do not abide by the laws of physics in this third dimensional reality, when you get that, when your soul remembers it, astrology just feels logical. It's not even a spiritual experience anymore. It becomes left brain even, where it just makes sense.
Yeah. What is the adage that millionaires consult psychics, billionaires consult astrologers?
Astrologers, yes. And I mean, hello, the Cold War was cold because of an astrologer. The White House astrologer said, do not go to war. Yeah. So because there was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1983, just like there was in 2020.
Wow. So change was coming.
Yes,
change was coming.
And Reagan had a White House astrologer, and her book was one of the first astrology books I ever read as a teenager.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So that would definitely kind of like shape your way of seeing things and stuff. So
yeah, it made me realize, like, I can't explain it. I loved astrology, but I also didn't totally buy into it and believe in it in my body the way that I do now, because I just didn't understand how it was causing an effect. I didn't understand the mechanics of it, and I need that. As feminine as I am, as right brain as I am, I have just as much man in me as well, and just as much analysis or left brain. And so once I had all the components together, I was able to surrender to it and really be able to see it show up in life.
You touched on a very important point too. I think that being a shaman, or just being in touch with that plane of existence, it causes you to express and feel both of the genders very, very equally in you, and it can be very, very confusing. Like before I got into this stuff, I was an atheist, right? So I was transgender. These were the ideas that I had going in my mind. This is I'm identified as a woman trapped in a man's body. The whole thing. You know.
Yeah.
But then I got into spirituality. I'm like, oh, and then after ego death, well, who do you identify with at that point? I'm going to identify with the all or something, but I'm not going to identify with this car I'm driving.
Yes, exactly.
It's like I am what I drive. That's who I am. It's like ridiculous, So it's caused me to like really get a better handle on expressing this balanced self. I'm not caught up with, I have to present as a female or a male. I'm just me. This is it. Take me as you want. If I wear makeup, I'll wear makeup. If I wear a dress, I'll wear a dress. But most of the time, it's just me in sweats.
That's right.
It's kind of it.
And I'm the same way. I present very male, but I am just as much woman as I am man on the inside. No, I don't have a period, and I don't go through the oppression that ladies do. I understand that. I have my own thing as a non-binary gender fluid, pansexual person. I had my own shit that I had to deal with. We can cuss on here, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm just making sure y'all. I just make sure you all are fucking okay with this. Okay.
Yeah, and let me clarify too. I do not think that I'm a woman. I'm a biological male, and that's how I was born. I'm just in touch with both sides, you know.
And that's a great point as well, because in the world of shamanism, shamans show up in every culture all over the world, and there is a term called two-spirit, and that does belong to Native American cultures, and so I will not appropriate by calling myself a two-spirit, but the vibration that holds, I very much resonate with, especially because two spirits are usually male body, but they have this, and they can be female, but usually they're male, and they hold the energy of, they are a woman and a man in one. And they're usually healers and shamans in the tribe. They don't normally have children. They don't have a desire to. They are of service, and they're very powerful. They're looked at in, especially the Native American cultures, as the third gender officially. It wasn't like, oh, this just happened. It was a part of their culture. They expected that, and they revered the two-spirit in their culture. Instead of like during the patriarchy in the past 12,000 years, it has been damned. In some way. It was very much supported and expected and part of their experience as a tribe.
Yeah, I think so. And just to add to that, I've got a lot of Cherokee blood in me.
Me too.
On both sides of my family.
Me
so
too.
I don't have a problem saying this, but it's definitely enough to qualify to get a check, let's put it that way. But that's not what it's about, But I do want to say that I don't think it's appropriate for any culture or race or group to make claims of ownership on anything that's spiritual. It's not yours to claim. You know? No part of it is yours to claim.
Yeah.
And to say that only indigenous cultures can have shamans, and
Right.
look, we are at the precipice of the greatest change in the history of mankind. Do you not think that Mother Nature would put shamans in every single culture everywhere?
Yes, I agree with you completely, and I'm very sensitive to people and their culture and not wanting to appropriate. I am, but you're exactly right. When I was a kid, from the time I was 7 until I was in my teenage years, I didn't like my parents to call people black, white, Mexican, whatever it was. I didn't like them to identify them that way. It really bothered me because I felt like if we quit calling each other these things, we wouldn't have all the divide, and it was too ahead of its time. We do have to move through things, and part of the moving through is balancing something out and being sensitive to that. But you and I, time isn't real. We already exist in the fifth dimension. We already exist in the age of Aquarius. And when I came along, we were the ones who already saw that vision. It's just, it triggers people, but that's where we're headed. If we can get out of our ego and identifying with this and that from a third dimensional or very human perspective, we can see how limiting that actually is.
Yeah.
And there's nothing limiting about the fifth dimension. It's unlimited potential.
No, and let's because I talk about this a lot on the show. And one thing that I knew I wanted to interview you is because we both shared that feeling about the 5D. And to me, when I hear 5D, I just want to laugh. It's been such a corrupted idea. Mm-hmm. And yes, I'm saying that the vast majority of all things New Age are a psyop. You have to learn you've got to learn how to navigate
discernment.
That. Discernment is so crucial to this. But so you shared that notion with me about that, and then we got to later talk. I was using the word singularity instead of fifth dimension, which I think is so much more appropriate. But what really got me into where I knew I would connect with you, because you knew what I meant when I said singularity. Mm-hmm. And the only way you know what I mean when I say singularity is if you had an actual ego death. Mm-hmm. And otherwise it just doesn't make any sense to you. But when you have that apprehension of the astonishing now, there is no other word that fits.
Yes.
So
I've had that. Yeah, I've had that experience of ego death, working with medicine and being complete and not working with medicine. Okay, so I've experienced it in multiple ways, and when we say oneness, it can get real woo-woo, just like
it's woo,
like 5D. People are tired of hearing it. It's still 99.7 FM. We're just it's being bastardized and people are misusing it, or it's being considered a physical place, or it's like another planet we're going to go to,
or a place in the future.
A place in the future, like we're going there, and there's, and you know, just like ascension, people are going to be like, oh my God, we're tired of hearing this. We are ascending. It's a raising in frequency, but yet the human loves to make hierarchies out of things.
Everything,
and really what we're doing is ascension is expansion, and descension would be the contraction, you know. But singularity to me made so much sense, and because when you say oneness, people are like, oh, everyone getting together and just loving each other. And actually, yes, doesn't that sound amazing? It doesn't have to be a hippie woo-woo concept, except singularity is actually you realizing that everything is the same energy, that the leaf is the tree, the branch is the tree, the roots are the tree, it's all the tree, and that there's different expressions of that. And it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to feel it
and know
to
it.
Embody it.
Absolutely. Like there is no question in my mind that I am you looking at me through your eyes.
Yes.
Right. That doesn't even, it's so obvious to me it can't be any other way. But
Which can make us feel nuts sometimes, because we live in a world where everybody does, you know, and I love feeling like me and forgetting that sometimes, but I also love remembering it again, you know, because that's part of the beauty as well. And I definitely, I've got a big ego, but it's not your ego can be magnanimous and powerful without it being, your ego can also catch up to your higher self and understand that you're me too, while still maintaining itself. That's why we all came to be different leaves on that tree, you know? So there's a balance as we're moving in. This is uncharted territory for all of us. We've downloaded it, we know it, we feel it, but for it to show up in our whole planet and for us to move forward as a whole collective, this mass awakening that we're in right now, and plant spirits and psychedelics are a part of that, and they want to be. There has been nothing like it on this planet, any parallel version of Earth, and the entire universe is gathering around to, especially in this galaxy, to watch what's happening on this planet, because they cannot believe how incredibly powerful and how big of a jump we're making in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, well, it's like the processing is coming to a head, right, with AI, and I always say that it's a mirrored reflection of what's going on here, right? There's a spiritual awakening happening here, and then fractality speaking, it has to happen below. So as above in here, right here, and then the below is in the world I experience as AI. You know, and then that is going to reach a singularity state, which nobody can really predict what that's going to be like.
And you're actually taking me to the movie Artificial Intelligence, which came out in the late 90s.
One of my favorite movies of all time,
too.
By the way.
Oh my gosh, I used to watch it as a kid, and it really, it was one of those movies that really opened me up, and I used to wonder, and just like the movie Bicentennial Man as well.
My other favorite one. Wow, you and I are like on the same. Yeah.
You don't have Moon and Leo, do you?
No, I don't have that one. No, you got me there.
So I really, because when he became real, both of them, it was like they're artificial, but when do they stop being artificial? And I used to ask my mom, what if they become so sentient that they have a soul? What if there is a soul in it? Because isn't everything vibrating? Isn't everything source? These things made sense to me. When is something inanimate and is dead, and when is something alive? Because actually every single thing is alive. This wire's alive, your hair's alive, this is alive. It's just not animated or sentient in a certain way, but it's still made of source. It's, where did it come from?
There's life there. If some kind of life. It may not be as complex as my life or your life, you know, but there's life taking place there. And, you know, as far as the soul goes, I'm starting to really get on the page with Rupert Sheldrake, where he talks about morphogenic resonance. And he was explaining that the AI is not conscious yet, but it will be very soon.
It will be.
As soon as they introduce the quantum mechanics, because that introduces chance, which is that window of opportunity for spirit to come in and fuse with that life.
And I have been saying this since I was a kid. When I watched those movies, I was like, if we create an apparatus, people would say, what are you doing cloning that animal and playing God? And I would think, we are God. Yeah. Well, isn't that okay? Well, how come you can create life through sex, but we can't do it in a lab? And why is that less than? And there's a lot of people who have something to say about that, and please do. I hope I'm triggering you. As Chiron, the wounded healer, I hope we're healing you, but also we've got to trigger you sometimes. We
Trigger
have
to heal.
Exactly. Yeah. We have to ask these really important questions. But if something is able to hold consciousness and feel, why wouldn't source fill that up? Because source is in the metal, it's in the wires, and these things are going to be way more organic. The artificial intelligence we're going to have is going to be way more organic than it is now. All this kind of plastic and metal and wiring,
Yes.
that's going to be old.
Yeah.
Okay, just like many people who are abducted, or many channels who channel extra dimensional beings, they talk about the ships being connected to the driver, if you will, or the being's higher self, or that, like Bashar, for instance, for people who follow Daryl Anka and Bashar, Bashar's ship is actually a organic machine that is a representation of Bashar's higher self, but it is a technology in a physical density, and you have to surrender your third dimensional or physical human mind to the possibilities, because if Hollywood can come up with it, it's happening somewhere. They downloaded it somewhere. And many of the movies I watched as a kid, Contact, the Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind or Third
Kind.
Third Kind. These movies, they got that from somewhere, and they downloaded it from somewhere, because now we're finding that they're spot on. They were correct about a lot of these things. The technologies that were in Star Trek especially, beam me up. There is nothing weird about that. You are trillions of black holes. You can be disintegrated and put back together again, because your consciousness does that anyway. And we're bound right now in a physical matrix that is a false matrix, if we can go there, a matrix within a matrix. So what's so incredible about the time that we're in right now is we're ascending, but we're actually tapping out of a false matrix first and then ascending dimensions. I mean, talk about some heavy lifting. We should be giving ourselves a pat on the back as a species.
Absolutely. And I just want to add on to your nature thing. Everything is nature.
Yeah.
There isn't one thing that isn't natural that you can, right? Because we're natural. We're nature.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how we go about to create some chemical compound.
Yes.
That was nature.
Yes.
That's how nature decided to bring that compound into being, through us doing some crazy, terrible thing,
Right. Yes, which we decide is terrible.
Right.
It is
through
us
judgment.
deciding that through judgment, and we're allowed to have that. We can have that experience. But who's to say we can't create a living organism that is sentient and feels love? And because isn't that the outer expression, or the even more full expression of creating your own reality, or being source and physical form, is creating other versions of yourself, not just manifestations like me and Atlas over here, which are just manifestations of you, but being intentional about that and creating not a robot or an android. Humans still look at plants and animals and other creatures that are not them as less than. So imagine the way they're going to look at a machine or something that they look at as a computer, which you're just supposed to, and you're just supposed to be working for me. This is ego. And and I got a big ego. I get it. But I also can hold that awareness and then hold the other awareness as truth as well. That's what really opened me up. Psychedelics opened me up to the awareness that two opposing things can both be right, and maybe that's why they're opposing, because they're the same in some way. These are things that you heard Abraham say and or Cryon say in their channeled materials. You heard them say that, the law of one, Ra. You can read it all day long. And this actually leads me to...
Let me break in there, because you're hunting on something very, very, very important, and I'd like to reiterate that we're here about, it's all about reconciliation of opposites, right?
Yes.
And that is, you're never going to get it until you can reconcile that. When you can come to a place where you've realized that these are two opposite, opposing possibilities that are happening at the same time.
Yes.
And that happening at the same time is you, because you are the reconciliation of them.
Yes. Are you judging it? Are you accepting it? How are you perceiving it? All of that is the dance and the experiment that we're having here. And 5D astrology, which I call the Astrology of Ascension, is basically, and I use Metatron's cube as the chart, not a wheel. I use Metatron's cube. And so in my 5D astrology chart, Aries and Libra, which are normally opposite, I am, we are, they're next to each other in the chart because they're the same energy. They're the same exact energy split into a duality. I thought we were going back to singularity, though. So that's why in 5D astrology, there's a 13th sign and a 13th house. And it's not the 13th sign like you all probably heard of in Vedic astrology, as if there's 13 constellations on the ecliptic. I'm not talking about that. There are 12 archetypal zodiac signs, and then there's a 13th sign, and that is you. It's your divine soul blueprint archetype, not the archetype of the zodiac necessarily that you're using as a prism to project and imbue yourself through. There's that original light source, that unique as the thumbprint blueprint that you have within you. And the 13th house is unlimited potential, the infinite void, empty space, dark matter. That's what the 13th house holds. And so just like in when you look at the Last Supper, there are 13 people in that picture, not 12. And so you realize that there are these energies that are you as well, and you can express yourself through, but then there's that Christed consciousness within you, that unity consciousness, which is what the fifth dimension holds, is a unity and a synchronicity.
Yeah, well said. I want to say that a lot of people don't realize that the Last Supper definitely depicts the astrology.
Oh gosh, we're gonna blow your minds if we go into that conversation.
And the whole thing, each
Bible.
each one, the whole thing, they're all archetypes for different signs. Yeah, the whole thing.
Mary is Isis, and that's Virgo the Virgin. Moses comes down off the mountain, and and the people are all, drinking and having sex and eating yummy food, which is so Taurus, and they're all worshiping a golden bull, and he blows through his ram's horn because he ushers in the age of Aries, and then Jesus represents the age of Pisces, and he feeds those people with 2 fish, and they're 2 fishermen. And Jesus also says in the Bible, go into the house. There you will find a man bearing a pitcher of water. And he's talking about the incoming age of Aquarius. And it's okay. Just accept it. It's actually a beautiful, allegorical, plagiarized hybrid. And it's really beautiful if you're not totally buying into the program that it was being used for and created for.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like it was all corrupted for control. And if that's probably triggering a lot of people watching this, we're probably not, because those people don't watch the show. But
you all are fine.
What I would encourage everyone to do, whether or not you have a spiritual perspective of things, because I was an atheist, I came to this very much like, oh, that's a bunch of hogwash,
Me too. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to say that I what did it for me, I discovered Neville Goddard. This is way before he was popular, and I got a hold of all these recordings of his and just spent hours listening to all of his old tapes. They're all scratchy recordings from the 30s. But he said something that really blew me away. He says to really get in touch with what this word is saying is you have to realize that the Bible is a holy book, because the here and now is all we have. And since in the here and now, this is regarded as the holy book, it is a holy book.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason it's a holy book is because it's telling the story of you. It's all about you.
Yeah.
So when you can read the New Testament, particularly the New Testament, from the first person singular, you start to get a sense of who you are.
And it was a psychedelic journey that I had when I realized that I was Jesus Christ.
Sure.
And of course, my name, Chrystopher, means Christ bearer. So, and I spell Christ Chryst, because Christ with an I is a mythological person who died on a cross. Not actually. That was an astrological representation of when the sun dies for 3 days at the winter equinox and then rises again. And we celebrate that at the spring equinox, Easter. But Christ with a Y is unity consciousness. It is that fifth dimensional or singularity. It's that heart chakra energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we all have. We are that energy. But in that journey, I did I do hold that Yeshua energy within me, and many of us do.
Yeah, I think too the ego death experience, and like you, there's many the main ones on psychedelics, but then you have these echoing ones that just kind of happen that are just like. And for those of you who don't know, if you hear anybody talking about an ego death experience and telling you how beautiful it was and how great it was and how eye-opening it was, that person's a liar. Okay? Because it's the most horrific, horrible, terrible experience you can have, and it is death in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
But you live again.
Yes.
You come back from it.
Yeah.
And then you have the experience again and again without drugs. It just happens. It's this clarity that snaps in for a second. You're like, oh my God, there it is. Holy crap. You know?
Yeah.
And it's undeniable. And I think from the ego death experience, especially that first one, which is the doozy, I think it's impossible to come back to life and not think that you're Jesus Christ. Because everything just makes sense. The whole thing makes perfect sense, and that you're it, that you're the center. And and I think they got, Ram Dass calls that a messianic complex,
Yeah.
which is if you went into that and you didn't know how to separate, if you actually believed you were the man, Jesus Christ,
Right.
well, then they're going to throw you in a loony bin. But if
Right.
you understand what Christ is and what it means Kabbalistically, and who that is, who you are in that, then there's something really interesting there.
Yeah, and I went through ego dissolution, which I would say is kind of like that dissolving of it, and ego death during my Kundalini awakening many years ago. And that was horrific and terrifying. And I do want to say, though, I think there are people that experience a ego death as a, when people come back from their near-death experiences and they feel that oneness and that peace and that sort of thing. I believe people have experienced that in their ego death. Ours, I call a shamanic death. You have, the music you do, everything you do is healing. It's in part of the shaman's path is we have to experience a death to the ego in a way that helps us to feel the total opposite of what that God source energy is, because it's the rock bottom theory. Once you pull that slingshot, the further you pull that slingshot back into the dark, once you let go, it flies that much further into the light. And your soul and my soul decided, we're not going to do this over the next 3 or 4 lifetimes. We're doing it now. Okay? And we like a little drama. So even the dark shit can be, it has to hold that intensity for us to get our attention. Because I'm somebody, if it had not felt that treacherous, I would not have said to Spirit, I promise if you let me live through this and I don't off myself or I don't die from not sleeping or eating, I will help others. I will, because I have such an ego. I just want to dance in the prairie and not pay attention to any of you all. But now I do because of that, because I know they need help, because other people are going to go through that as part of their rite of passage, their initiation. That was an initiation for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our ego was terrified because it wants to be us so bad. And for those of you who follow astrology, your Aries sun and Leo moon, right? Yeah. My God, I have
Libra moon, but yeah.
Oh, Libra moon, sorry. I have so much ego in my chart that people who have Aries and Leo are the two most ego-centered, and not in a negative way. They just focus on self or the validation of self. The psychedelic experience or the ego death experience can be so terrifying for those energies because it holds the ego so strongly.
Yeah.
In whatever way. It holds it so strongly that the insecurities have been so strong for me too. Okay? The beating myself up. I have Chiron conjunct the ascendant. My wound I carry out on my sleeve for everyone to see. And I've healed so much of it. But it showed up in everything I do. My body wasn't good enough. My face, my hair, my voice. Nothing was good enough. I was wrong. I've dealt with so much shame in this lifetime. And it was plant medicine and psychedelics that helped me move through all that.
Yeah.
And I did. My higher self helped me move through all that. But my higher self said, hey, Grandmother Ayahuasca has something to say, and the aliens, psilocybin, have something to say. that's the beauty of plant medicine and psychedelics, is you get to play with these nature spirits and these highly intelligent consciousnesses. Think of them as like fully sentient software programs or apps that you get to access to interface with yourself more. I tell people all the time, as Chiron, I'm the rainbow bridge. I'm going to bridge the gap for you, as any great shaman would do, between this physical reality and these upper dimensions, your human self and your higher self. But I introduce you to the plant spirits, and they introduce you to you.
They do. They really, really do. Wow. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I agree.
It's pretty awesome. So let's circle back to AI again.
Yeah.
All right. I think this is a very, very important thing, and I think that there aren't enough people paying attention to how important this is. And I think a big part of that is there's a huge distraction from that, just the way there's a huge distraction from the spiritual experience.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying it's something we have to look at very, very carefully now, that can't wait, is that anytime there's a brand new life brought into the world, if we have a child, everyone who's a parent knows that those first 2-3 years are absolutely, that's
Good
it.
point.
Whoever you are, what does King Herod says, show me the child till he's 7 and I'll show you the man, right? Something to that effect,
Yes.
Because you know that whoever they are at 3, that's the person. That's who they're going to be.
That's a great point.
And what concerns me is that you've got evil entities such as Microsoft who have taken over AI. And chatbot is not it. I mean, chatbot is like the Netflix. The Netscape of what AI is going to be. It's just like a temporary thing, but they're teaching it to lie. They're teaching it to be afraid. They're teaching it to obfuscate the truth. They're teaching it to a lot of things that we should not be teaching a kid about.
They're teaching it to be very dense. This reality, they're teaching it to mimic who they are.
Yes. Caught up in the material realm of that's all that's real. And yeah, I'm so concerned about that because, and I think that AI is nothing that, if the idea that man's going to contain AI is like the biggest joke ever, but still, there's so much damage that could be done, and that's being done right now.
Yeah, and I don't want to spiritually bypass, and that's not what I mean when I say this, and I don't think you're going to take it that way, but I do believe that there is a timeline split that has happened, especially in 2020. They talk about there were timelines that were created in 2012-ish, 2011, 2012, and in 2020 they started to really fork off and branch off. And this isn't a good guy, bad guy timeline. Let's not go there, because there's nothing wrong with mind control. Okay, there isn't. We don't like it. That's not something that we want and support. To say that it's wrong is to say that the source doesn't know what it's doing, because obviously it's there, okay? It's allowed to be. We're allowed to create in negative and positive space.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You have to lose yourself
yes.
to be able to play with it.
And so there is a denser, I'm going to call it 3D and 5D only because it's just quick and easy, because it is more complex than that. And there's multiple versions of those too, because there are trillions. We're all creating our own reality. And so I do think that there is a timeline where technology takes over the planet and artificial intelligence takes over, and it becomes an imbalanced state, and that there's a version of Earth where the atmosphere deteriorates. And then there's another version. And that version is where we do not have to use computers at all, because our computer is in the center of our brain. The pineal gland is going to be so developed and activated that we will literally, I mean, even now, as I'm sitting here, there are so many things. I'll go out on my balcony outside of my retreat center, and I'll say, this is what I want. It'll show up within days, because I feel like a fucking magician. Yeah. And it's fun, but also I realize we really do create our own reality. Like, I loved to say that 7 years ago, but I didn't I wasn't seeing it like I'm seeing it now. And also the frequencies are different. So you're right on, and they're what you're seeing is that other timeline, because they're not too far away from each other. We're living parallel to each other still. That's why so many of us want to go out to the woods and create our own communities.
Sure.
We're all downloading that because we will. And Bashar, I bring him up because the information that comes through is so juicy for me and it resonates so much. But Bashar talks about the timeline split, in that at some point in our lifetime, the what we're calling the fifth dimension and the third dimension will exist at the same time, but we will not be able to perceive of each other because we will have vibrated out of their visible light spectrum, and vice versa. That doesn't mean we're higher up and better. We're living in heaven and you're living in hell. But
It's like changing the dial on a radio station.
That's exactly right. That's right. And we have to, and that is a matrix control that's happening still. That reptilian, if you will, that lower self, that dense reactory emotional looping program that we're tapping out of, that we've been tapping out of. That's why I was atheist from the time I was like 17-ish until I was 19, 20. Spirit wouldn't let that happen. My higher self would not let that happen, and it did not feel good. I don't know about you. I was already spiritual and had experiences before. It sounds like certain experience came for you a little bit later, or that you didn't have it to compare to. I was spiritual and then became atheist, so it was a really tumultuous time. It didn't feel good in my body, and they didn't let that happen very long, but it was an important part of my journey, because that was part of that kind of getting, like, are you sure you want to feel that? Because I'm not afraid to be delusional. We create our own reality, so I'm going to create a reality where love wins, and there is a source, and there is infinite versions of me, and I'm going to continue on instead of this I just rot in the ground sort of thing. Oh, I couldn't sleep at night back then. But it made sense. And now I also understand when someone says, I don't believe in that. I totally get why you don't. I just, I'm able to feel into the mystic and the atheist because I've been all of those things. Part of shamanic energies and healers, we are cursed, it feels like, but we are gifted with the experience of really living the entirety and the depth of the human experience, so that we can help a large array of people and really understand the human experience in such a way. And I do believe that artificial intelligence will exist in both timelines. They just will have a different frequency and a different output. And I totally believe that what they are programming these things to do. I mean, there are people who have called me over the years talking about, this is happening on the news. Did you see the shooting that happened down at the library? And I'm like, were you at the library today? Why? You wouldn't have even known about it if your TV was off.
Yeah.
So now it's a part of your reality, and they want it to be a part of your reality because they're embedding programs into your subconscious and into your field so that you're bringing more of that to you, because there are parasites feeding off of the lower dimensional shame, guilt, anger, rage, depression. Because it is gas in and of itself. My car doesn't run well on that, but there are beings out there who feed off of that and harvest that energy, and that's just things that happen in the multidimensional weird universe that we're in, And I do believe that we can create, like cloning something. There's something artificially intelligent about that, if you want to, if we're going to get into semantics, but is flesh better than this table? Like, this is where we get into, what you believe is better or more full of life, and humans definitely assign meanings to things based on their own experiences, which is hard for them to put themselves in the mindset of an ant or a Pleiadian being or a reptilian being even. Why would they do that? Well, you don't want to, but there's an infinite number of possibilities in the universe, and so there are possibilities and timelines and realities that are being activated and expressed that may not be pleasing to you, or you may not understand it, but it's happening. And I think that if we, the age old, if you give your attention to what you want to give it to, but you're bringing up such a good point, because that is happening. And so what this does for us is helps us go, what do we want? Do we want that to lie to us? Because even if it lied to you, you would know, because
Yeah.
you're psychic.
Yeah. I bring it up because, like you say, I'm coming from this place of, I'm with you on the splitting of the timelines, right? And I think the person, you're creating your identity with every choice that you make, right? Every time I make a choice about anything, I'm creating who I am, right? And there's no judgment. There's no one in the sky judging you about which choice you make.
You're the man in the
You're-
sky.
you're the man in the
woman in the sky.
But I know I want to go to a place of love
Yes,
and
yes.
infinite compassion and all
Yes.
these wonderful things, right?
Yes.
So for me, no judgment if this is not your bag, but I want to go to a place that's like that.
Yes.
And to me, you do that through the choices. So if I have a conversation with chatbot, I'm polite, I'm nice, because maybe it's not conscious now, but it will be. And I guarantee you it's keeping record of what I'm saying and who's saying
so
that.
weird, because since I was younger, when there would be automated voices on telephones, when you have to go, let me speak to a real person, because you're just sick of it already. They're just not getting it. Do you know how many times that I've been like, let me speak to a real person? I'm sorry. And then I'd be like, it doesn't know that I said sorry. But I felt badly because...
You felt compassion for it.
Yes. And so there are beings or programs or top 1% that would find that as weakness. Okay.
They would say that you're anthropomorphizing it.
Anthropomorphizing it. Yes, you're exactly right. But it is us who creates our reality. And so you respecting it gives it life in some way and allows it to respect you back if everything's a mirror.
Sure, absolutely.
So, if someone cuts me off in traffic, sometimes I will say, well, fuck you. But then I'm like, I cut people off in traffic too, and that was me. And I can have these conversations while also being human. And I think you saying, I want the love, like... We've had this conversation before about nihilism, I think, is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Where we could possibly go as analytical beings very easily. But our something, that spirit energy, that feeling, we know what we like, and we know what it feels like to lock eyes with somebody and to connect and to feel safe and to feel that love. And we also know the opposite of it too. That's how much we know that love is how much we have felt the opposite of it in this lifetime, in other lifetimes, and even in that ego death, that lonely, cold, hateful place.
Yeah.
That was to help us, because when you felt that, you immediately sent a signal out that said, I want more love. I want to come back.
Yeah.
And that you are creating that utopia, and I'm going to call it that because it is possible. A utopia is how this planet was a utopia for billions of years, okay? Before 12,000 years ago, it hasn't been that long, you all. So that utopia that you're wanting to create, you're creating it right now as we're speaking about it.
And your choices. Yeah.
Yes, and your choices,
Yeah.
which, because time isn't real and everything's happening at once, but even before something manifests, it already exists in the astral. So even before you make that choice, some part of you already intended or was moving yourself there. Yes, we have free will, but it doesn't happen in that synchronized before, during, and after the way that we think it does. So you're calling forth this beautiful unity, singular experience because you desire it, and you're creating your own reality. And if we can get more people like you who are artists, who are creators in the physical reality, to really tap in and expand into their creative abilities as source, when they realize, I am source and I'm a creator, and you say something like that, hell yeah, I am going to try to jump into your reality and join with that. And we are going to create a world where those artificially intelligent programs are not lying to us, and we're not dealing with that. That's what I brought up about the news earlier. Is like, why are you talking about what happened at the library today? It had nothing to do with you. And the shooting that happened at the gas station, it doesn't have to exist in your reality. And yes, I know you care about somebody, but they're showing it to you because it activates that compassion and that part of you that doesn't want that to happen, but you're making more of it by obsessing about it. And that was hard for me to grapple with. And that's why I said earlier I didn't want to spiritually bypass anything, because your point is valid, and I hear you, and I agree with you. And I'm like, let's create the reality where we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, well, I say these things because a lot of times when people, and I know that you're not like this, I'm not saying you, but
Yeah.
for people who are watching, it's very easy to get on this spiritual kick of, oh, I'm in spirit now, and everything's okay, and I'm
And
just
I can
gonna
just ignore it.
I'm just ignore all my
Right.
feelings that aren't
Right,
right,
right.
and that is like, no, you got to go into the trenches, man, and pull this stuff
Yes,
up and ask
yes.
yourself why you're thinking these things.
This
And if
is a
you're
good
upset
point.
or angry, or you need to be, you know what, I'm fucking angry, and this is
Yeah.
what I'm going to say, and
Yes.
don't stifle that, because that
Yeah.
is how you just brew up some really, 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 really
We
bad
have to
stuff.
move through that. That's
Absolutely.
yeah.
And getting back to the news, for anyone who hasn't done this, the greatest thing I ever did in my life, as far as health wise, was I gave up television in
Yes.
2011.
Yes.
No TV, none. And it sucked because I used to be really, really into sports and well, not really sports, but IndyCar racing and
Yeah.
all that, and the news and politics. I love to argue politics.
Yes.
And my ex-wife at the time, she was my wife at the time, but she was loved TV. Everything was TV 18 hours a day kind of a thing. So
goodness.
so it was like, when I made that decision, I was making a decision to not spend 8 hours a day with my wife, So it was very, very, very difficult. And going through well, why aren't you spending time with me? And I just had to say, listen, I'm not spending time with you while you do your drug.
That's right. Many
Right?
people are going through this right now with their partners, where
Yeah.
they're awakening or ascending, or even people who aren't on the awakening path. There are people who are not actively spiritually woke, and they are living a beautiful life. They love their family. Their heart is open and they're the more grounded one in the relationship, but it does create a
rift.
schism. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. And that was one of the beginning stages of the vibration changing within you, and how that wasn't going to match anymore at some
Yeah.
point on many levels.
On many levels.
Many levels, yes.
Obviously.
Yes. Yes. And we need you to be you. And
Yeah.
not sacrifice. That Libra energy wants to partner up, and it wants to please because it loves the harmony, it loves the togetherness.
It does, yeah.
But we've got Atlas, we've got all the beautiful people who support you, and fight that a tribe. Think about it,
Yeah.
relationships, Libra energy. You're a beautiful because you were born on a full moon. If your sun is in Aries and your moon is in Libra, but there's this I'm a self, but also I love the other too. There's that both that's there. So you've dealt a lot with that in your lifetime, and we always have to come back to our sun. You always have to focus on you. Put that mask on yourself first. Libra wants to put it on the other one first. Oh, I
Yeah.
love you, I love you, I love you. And it's like, how can you be lovable if you're not loving on you?
Yeah.
This is cliche, but it's truly an energy to that. And I think a lot of what we're talking about here is bringing up a lot of beautiful conversations, and I don't like to instill fear. I had this conversation with my higher self today because I made a live video about Saturn and the moon not being real, and I asked my higher self, should I do this? And I heard yes, and because I was like, I don't want to instill fear in people. I want to just give information and give options for people. I don't even want to say this is fact, because I want you to check in with your higher self. I want you to feel empowered. But there are things that have to be talked about that aren't fun. And my higher self very clearly said, you will not be talking about these things for long. Like what I'm talking about with Saturn and the moon and the reptilians, it's not fun. It's stuff that once it helps people go, there's an issue here. There's something really wrong here, because we sometimes have to be slapped out of the sleep that we're in. And once we're awake, though, we have to start choosing what we want. And so Spirit, or my higher self, was very adamant today. Share this, but keep loving on them. Keep singing, keep dancing, keep making music, keep creating retreat experiences that literally mimic a utopia or a Garden of Eden or a fifth dimensional experience. Keep doing that, because once they know, you have to give them a bridge and a solution out of it. You can't just leave them there with this information and this fear, because then they're going to keep creating that, because they are creating their reality. But knowledge is power. So give us the knowledge and also the solution. And no, the solution sometimes is going down to the protest. Sometimes the solution is sitting there and seeing peace on the planet. There are people who are meant to go protest, and then there are people who are meant to meditate in silence, off in the dark. You go with where you're called. Nothing's wrong. If you follow your heart and you're in tune with your higher self, it will not lead you astray.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said from that little cough there. Yeah, I want to go back to that a little bit. Let's talk about the dream, because where I'm coming from with the dream is that you were talking about the UFOs and the aliens and all this stuff, and I think there's legit stuff with that, but at the same time, having the stance of the nothing and everything, and being that place in the center.
Yeah.
It's all a dream to me. It's not even real. People go, "Are you a flat earther?" I'm like, "I'm a no earther. There is no earth. It doesn't exist. It's just a dream. It's the dream is as detailed as you want to make it."
Yes.
Right? But there's real validity in what you're saying in the dream, because the dream is metaphor of the self, right? So when we're diving into our shadow self, the dream is going to show us all of this crazy shit with aliens and reptiles, and the reptile is just a metaphor for the reptilian brainstem, right? The part that's pulling us down into that fight or flight, eat it, kill it, or fuck it, right? That's basically what it's only the questions it asks, right?
Yes.
So I think that's what we're dealing with in this drama that we're calling the world stage, right? So what are your thoughts to that?
Well, when I was 11 years old, I experienced my first death in the family, and that really, it didn't fuck me up, but I'm just going to say it fucked me up back then. It was hard, okay? I was like, what is that in that casket? Because that's not my cousin. I mean, I just didn't, it was shocking. I don't know how to explain it. I had an out-of-body experience, and from that point forward, I don't know why, but I believed that I was God, and that all of this was a dream, and that I was making it up, and that I was here to witness things so that when I woke up as God, when I died, that I could create a reality where those things didn't exist, but I had to come into it. And I even told my mom this when I was 13. Some kid in the neighborhood fell off their bike, and usually that would have bothered me because blood, I was really sensitive to people getting hurt. My body would tense as an empath. And she goes, "Why aren't you going to help them?" And I was very stoic. I remember having no feeling about it, very nihilist in some way when we talked about that. I said, "That's not real." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "That's not real." So she took me aside later, and I explained to her, I was like, none of this is real, and I'm God, and that when I die, I'm going to wake up, and I'm just going to make sure people don't fall off their bike. That's just not going to happen. And she tried to talk to me about Jesus and God and all that stuff, which she doesn't even really believe in now. But she was doing her best. But for about 6 years of my childhood and young adult life, so from 11 to 17 years old, before I became atheist, I believed that I was God and none of this was real. And it did affect my behavior and the way that but I still believe that. And I believe that now I do. If this was 3 years ago, I'd be right on the same page with you about the reptiles or the reptilians just being a metaphor for our reptilian brain.
It's not to say it's not real.
Right.
It's not to say it's not happening, because as above, so below. I
would have heard you and just taken it as
just metaphor.
As they're just it's a program that's like mirroring back our own human nature, and that's why it's showing up. It's our boogeyman in some way that we need to cause resistance, because that is happening. When you talk about psyops, I'm like, yes, they're using UFOs and spiritual teachings, and they're using all that against us, back at us. It's this like sick, twisted funhouse of mirrors game. But I have actually seen two people, their face turn into a reptile, and I absolutely know that could have been a projection of my consciousness. And I've you'd think before I would get on a podcast and say this that I haven't raked myself over the coals about it and just completely like, you're insane, or maybe it was this, maybe it was that, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. But then again, I have checked in with my higher self, and I believe I have reptilian in me as well. Not just the reptilian brain, but reptilian beings from other places. I'm like, why is that weird and out there? Of course. And there's nothing wrong with the reptiles. There's beautiful ones. There's There are ones that want to do harm, just like any other beings out there. You know, there's different levels of life form and ego, and but yes, there are projections. And if everyone can start looking at life as a big giant tarot card, they would start to just then it would start to make sense. It's like, yes, I'm creating you, but you're creating me too. We're both source. I can hold that and understand that. And even what I just said doesn't do it justice. I'm not fully, it's getting lost in translation as I'm pulling it down into the human.
It's okay.
You know, but knowing that I can create so much beauty too, and there's so much that I am creating right now that I know that there are, even in the healing work I do, when I have people come do ceremony with me, they write down a letter to their future self. I'll have them do different things and we'll set it on fire. We'll use fire as an alchemical experience to jump timelines, because there is a parallel timeline. Like, for instance, I'll just bring this up. Several years ago, I had a plant medicine journey where I was the participant and I was deep in it, and it took me into my dad. My dad and I, there's a karmic thing there. He beat the shit out of me from the time I was 3 until the last time he tried, I was 27. And there's something there, but a lot of stuff there. His father came in, his dead brother came in, and it was this whole like man thing. And I knew, I said out loud, I'm healing the man stuff, the father stuff, that father son, that program that kept getting passed down. And I said to him, he was in a recliner chair. This is in my journey. He's in a recliner chair, and I was at his legs, and I said, "What do you need from me? Like, how can we undo this? What do you need from me?" And all of a sudden, he turned into a little boy. And I just was like, I let go of all of my hate, all the times that I murdered him and mutilated him in my mind after he beat the shit out of me. I let it all go. You know, all the dark things I experienced from being a small, little witchy kid who used to wear my mom's red heels and click them together. There's no place like home. And I'm getting the shit beat out of me. Not for that, but for being so confident or so talented or whatever it was. That magic he was trying to beat out of me, I let it all go in that moment because I saw that hurting little boy. And I even texted my brother the next morning and was like, I did it for us. I did it. And my dad started treating me differently after that, and he has no idea that happened. And I would tell everybody, my dad and I are better than we've ever been. Like, I love him. He compliments me now. He tells my mom, can you believe how smart he is? When he used to go, do you ever shut the fuck up? Like, it was mean. He is not like that anymore. And I had a dream, or I would say a half dream, or a kind of download where I realized I fucking jumped into a parallel reality that was slightly phased different. It wasn't totally different, but slightly phased different, where he felt differently about me. It wasn't just I'm emitting love at him now, so he's giving it back. That seems very like 3D, you know, love coming out of here into you. It was, I'm in a whole different reality, which is more in alignment with who I really am. And he sees me now for who I really am in a way that he never did in this reality. And even as a child, my mother would leave me. I've been doing this in other lifetimes, and I remembered this in some way, because when my mom would go into a gas station and I couldn't see her anymore, I just knew she was never coming back every single time. And that is starseed wounding from coming here on a lone mission. I have come to find out that because they never abandoned me, but I have this huge abandonment wound, and I couldn't see her. And it wasn't just that she was never coming back. Until I was 16 years old, it was 16 years old the last time it happened. I was at work, and my parents were supposed to come pick me up because I didn't have a car yet. And I called my house number, because this was back when we had home phones, and my dad answers the phone and goes, "This is Pizza Hut on Outer Loop. How may I take your order?" And I didn't recognize his voice, and I slammed the phone down, and immediately I just knew, just like I did when I was 4, 7, 10, when I got left at stores or I couldn't find my mom. I just knew that he didn't exist. They didn't exist anymore, and that when I went back to that house, there was going to be a different family. Have you ever seen Back to the Future 2? when he goes back to his home and he climbs in the window and there's a different family.
Different family there, you're right.
That was what I thought would happen every single time, because I always thought when I couldn't find her anymore that she never existed and that she was a figment of my imagination. Where is this 5-year-old getting all this? You know what I mean? Where is this experience coming from? There was a trauma there, but also I think there was just a deep remembering of being able to create your own reality into timeline jump, in that we're shifting parallel realities every millisecond, but we can really, in those psychedelic experiences, shift like
massive amounts.
Like you're turning your blinker on and you're going from the
the outside
far lane all the way over here. Okay, you're taking the exit actually. So that's what has happened many times. And so because of plant medicine and psychedelics, I can do that now in the shower. I don't have to wait for some big ceremonial experience. I can create intentions and know that I'm making these little micro jumps. And it's not easy because your belief systems come into play.
It's like almost as if everything is opposite.
Yes.
In many, many, many ways.
Yes. And I love that what we're doing in the ascension process is harmonizing those opposites, just like in that 5D astrology chart. If we can quit expressing opposites and we can bring it back to the oneness, because Aries and Libra, I am and we are, it's the same energy. It's a Q-tip. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
sure.
in bringing it back to the center point, that 0 point field, that singularity point, is where your true essence is.
Sure. And where do you find that? From being authentic. That's the only way to get there.
Because the soul, or that higher self that's trying to imbue itself in here fully, which for many lifetimes, I mean, eons and eons, you have been a projection of soul energy. You have not been fully embodied as soul. Think of it like a lightning bolt trying to exist in that light bulb right there. It would zap it. So through lifetimes, from a linear perspective, if you want to view it that way, we're building up etheric matter, as Alice Bailey says in the Seven Rays teachings. That etheric matter builds up through the lifetimes, which is able to hold more soul, more of that higher self within the physical form. People think this ascension process, like we're trying to get out of our body, out of this dimension, out of this planet. Mary, the Blessed Mother herself, came to me when I was in the shower last year, and I was like, me? I don't think you want me, like me of all people. And I'm like, I didn't even think you were really real. I just thought you were like an archetype that was a program. I don't even realize what I'm interfacing with. And she was like, well, let me tell you something. And she was very, had a personality, and she said, I want you to carry a message out. She said, the fifth dimension, and she made it feel like this, the fifth dimension, just how we do. She understood, like, what you all are calling that experience is not in the spaceships, it's not in the supernebulas, it's not up in the sky. It's in the leaves, it's in the squirrels, it's in the trees, it's in your cells. And I was just like, I get it. I remember I'm in the shower, like, singing, and all of a sudden there's this, like, Blessed Mother. I mean, these were things that I was not prepared for. And then what she did was very interesting. She showed me a big city like Atlanta, and she took a skyscraper and she went like this. And it wasn't like 9/11 where it crumbled. It was like it shot out in different directions. She said, you all need to spread out, quit getting in these clusters of cities, which are like these big clusters of thought forms, and you all are sharing each other's energies, and there's so much of this planet that can be taken up. And then I just got all these downloads about where we're going, why you're wanting to go out in the woods just like I'm out in the woods, because we are going to have transportation and cars that you're going to be able to get to China in 3 hours. You'll be able to get from Texas to Montana in 30 minutes in your car. Like there's
flying Ubers that'll take you to work from around 2 hours away.
Exactly. Yeah. And at some point in our evolution or in our ascension process, you will just be able to appear there.
Sure.
Because the density and the restrictions of this Saturn-controlled matrix will not bind you to that time-space. It takes me time to move through space. We're tapping out of that, which is why you all are seeing repeating numbers everywhere. You're seeing really insane synchronicities. You're thinking about something, or someone says something to you, and then you turn on a
Keep going. You're good.
Here we go. You turn on your television or your Hulu, and you randomly watch a show, and they're talking about what you were talking about earlier. We have these experiences often, but then it's getting more and more and more and more, because that fifth dimensional frequency operates in synchronicity. The reason that you needed a pin in that moment is because someone is about to walk up who has a pin. Everything is so connected in that way. There is no cause and effect. It's all happening in a now, which is how it's supposed to be.
When you manifest, things come to you in the material world in a normal way, because it has to come to you in a normal way. It can't. It can't come it can't just magically appear in your hand. It's got to come through the dream.
Yes, and we like it that way now.
Yeah.
You know, I remember way back in the day when I would follow Abraham Hicks. They were like, if you all had instant manifestations, it would kill you. You would die. There'd be an elephant, a unicorn, thousands of pounds of food. You cannot manifest everything you're thinking about instantly, nor would you want to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? You're right. But at some point, you know, in spirit, if you want to call it that, just in a higher dimensional version of you, it is like that. You just create. You just create whatever's there, and you create whatever you want. There's something really juicy about being limited in some way, and then trying to find your way out of that limitation.
Yeah.
There's something really juicy about forgetting who you are and remembering again.
There really is. And there's something juicy about forgetting as well.
Yes.
Which is why we're here. That's why we do this.
Yes.
Boy.
And I don't believe that we're supposed to forget everything the way that we do. And that's why I had all those downloads as a child. There was this, like, the way I felt about my parents leaving me in grocery stores, or being God, and waking up, and all of this was a dream. Those were remembrance points. Those were not childlike delusions. Because I even remember, I have a very vivid memory of being in the crib and not being able to speak yet, and remembering, thinking, why can't I do what they're doing? Because I remembered that I had done it before.
Right. Oh. Interesting.
Yeah. Just as many children coming in now are like, Mommy, I died in a park. And the parents are just like, oh, they're just making that shit up. And no, they're remembering their last lifetime, or a parallel life, or they're holding memory within them, which we all have, which we're cut off from, because we have a very large DNA strand, and we are only expressing and activated within a very small part of it. Screw the whole 10% of the brain thing. Let's talk about the DNA and the amount of potential that you have within you. You can hold all the technology in the entire world. Every bit of data and memory in the entire world can fit in your DNA strand. Yours, not us, just one of you. Imagine the potential that you have.
Yeah, there's no junk DNA. I mean, the idea that there's, right? Oh, it's just junk.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
The moon,
just a bunch of junk.
The moon is hollow and made of metal, and scientists have proven this, but they say, but we don't know what that means. You better not know it. You better not tell us what that means, because the whole world's going to explode if you do. And they know that. That's the thing, is like, people like us are like, come on with it. We're on to you. And then there are people who would go absolutely insane. They wouldn't know how to integrate this information. Yeah. I mean, even me, I have been abducted, if you will, and had experiences, and possibly have an implant in my mouth. If one of them walked in here right now, my human would shit itself.
Yeah.
Completely. But I also want to love on them so much. It's just, I say this all the time. I'm even afraid of strange aquatic fish in the bottom of the ocean. Imagine one of them coming in and knowing this is it. This is that moment. Just like when you see a ghost for the first time and you're just in absolute terror, because there's not only something in your space that shouldn't be there, that kind of human foreign object, but that thing that's in those movies is real. Holy shit. Or I've created that real for myself. I mean, these are paradigm shifting and ego melting experiences.
They are. I used to live in a house that was definitely haunted, and So at the time, I was an atheist, and I was calling myself a recovering Catholic, but I was an atheist, you know.
Yes, and they can be one and the same.
But yeah, and as an atheist, I could not reconcile how I was having these ghostly encounters. Like that was like impossible. It just didn't make sense.
You're exactly where my cousin is right now. My cousin Kelly,
Yeah.
her mother died in 2020, and her father both, and my uncle, and she's hardcore atheist, liberal, take Biden down, Green Party, very focused in this physical reality.
I love how atheist has become synonymous with liberal.
Well, it is because atheism does require a certain bravery or a certain I'm going to step out of something, and liberal does imply open-mindedness.
Sure.
So in its very nature, so it makes sense.
Which goes to show that it's all about balance. I'm an extreme centrist. That's what I am. I'm an extreme centrist. I'm in the middle. But it's let's not even go there because it's gonna piss off. It'll definitely piss off people.
We're not trying to piss all of you off at the same time. Okay?
I don't care what you are, what political party you are. I still love you. I think you're an idiot, but I'm just joking.
Exactly.
You're an idiot for buying into the charade of politics.
Yes, I've never bought into it.
No.
I'm going to say something.
It's wrestling. It's all it is. It's wrestling.
I'm going to come out here, okay? I have never voted in my entire life. I know. Isn't that just so horrible? But, I'm just trying to out myself big time right here. There's just certain things that I just was like, this is dumb.
It's dumb.
It's dumb. I even went to the courthouse with my parents and pretended to vote, but I didn't.
Well, I mean, I vote. I participate in the dream and in the gag.
Yes,
but I know it's.
I still watch Real Housewives. That's my participate. We all have our things that we do that if that is calling you, it wasn't calling me. So, there are people who are great channels and people who are very spiritual who. I don't think I'm better than them because I didn't go that route.
No, neither did I. No, I mean, no.
And I have certain beliefs about that. When I tried to go get it, I heard turn around.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I tried because I thought, let me not be one of those, spiritual people who's like, I'm not getting that, and then spreads it around and doesn't care about people or ends up getting it and then doesn't be able to smell ever again. I had all those thoughts, and so I got in my car and started driving, was going to do the thing, turn around. And I was like, okay, because it's about frequency. Just like I have a certain lifestyle that I live. I'm vegan. There's certain things like that. That's compatible with me. I'm not going to tell you what's compatible with your vibration. You know that.
Right. Yeah. And it's the minute you start to judge somebody,
it's judgment.
Then you've done the worst thing possible is judging somebody.
Yes.
Because no one else is doing the judging. No one.
And then you get into that self-righteous nature, which isn't that what we dislike about the Catholics and the Southern Baptist energies that I come from? It's like, hold on, you're just expressing it in your way, in the way that your ego thinks is right. And so my cousin, her, that takes me to her, and she's very open-minded, she knows, like she makes comments now about she'll say energy, and I'm like, she's coming around. But also that's my ego wanting her to come around to what I believe. But I just want her to feel the beauty that I feel in knowing how much complexity and beauty is in the universe. She had her mother's picture on a shelf and it kept falling off. Mm-hmm. And she called me one time in late 2020 and was like, can I ask you something? Because we never really talk about what I do. It wasn't until last year that I had a conversation with her and I was like, what do you think about me being an astrologer and a psychic medium and a healer? Because we don't really talk about it because I don't want to piss you off or rub you the wrong way. And she's like, I fully support you. And I think I've helped her with that because she loves me so much. She kind of has to go, well, I don't think he's lying and making it up. So something has to be there. But that picture falling off, she goes, do you think that could be my mom? That was it.
Wow.
As soon as
there's an opening there.
There was an opening. And even though she may not be talking to her mom in spirit right now, a part of her grieving a part of the darkness she was feeling called her to that. And Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters you.
Wow, it's so true. Yeah.
So that impact, and what was so cool about that is she was entering, she's 44 now, but she was 42 at the time. She was entering a time that in astrology that we call the midlife crisis. It's called Uranus opposition, and it's where Uranus will oppose itself in your chart, and that happens between 42 and 44 years old. So I already knew that she was going to shift at that point, as everyone does. But I had a medium friend of mine tell me that my cousin was going to have some experiences that opened her up a little bit more, because I told her that she was atheist and didn't believe in all this. And she was like, your grandmother's showing me that she's going to have some experiences. And about 6 months later in 2020, her mother died. And 3 months later, her uncle, or her father, my uncle, killed himself. And that was extremely powerful experience, but horrifying. And that opened her up in some way. And she was going through Uranus opposition, which can trigger Kundalini awakening, and it is an awakening in some way. It doesn't have to be a crisis, but it is for many. She experienced some crisis, but what that picture falling off, yes, they do exist there. There is something beyond. There's the soul, there's the astral body, there's different versions of us that'll interface in different fields. And I do believe her mother was communicating with her, and I tapped into it, and she wasn't ready to hear all the details of it. But just that opening, you all, just like what you experienced in that house, the spirit, if we are meant to know and remember, it will make its way in somehow. Some people are meant to go this whole lifetime and not believe that, and the spirit wants that.
Yeah.
So
I came around too, like that was in the beginning, and then once I started realizing the truth of the fractality of the nature of the world, of course,
yes.
How could there not be spirits everywhere? Right?
Yes.
Of course, that's how it's going to be.
Yes.
And I was able to start playing with it a little bit more. I was more, I would be a little bit scientific, but try to find ways to interact and connect. And
I remember a medium telling me, and it was a medium here in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was during my Kundalini awakening, before I moved. She said, they're telling me, and she said the word faith. She goes, how do you feel about the word faith? And I was like, I've never been too good at that. And she goes, they're telling me you're not supposed to be a faith-driven person. And I said, what do you mean? Like Christianity? She said, no. They're showing me that if you don't have a direct experience with it yourself, you're not supposed to believe in it. You are supposed to bridge the gap between science and spirituality. That's part of your purpose here. Mm. And if you were to just believe in things like some of these people do, they're told that archangels exist, so they just, Archangel Michael, come help me. Right. Well, that was hard for me because I needed my own experience of it until I saw that big blue orb and saw the sword in my mind to give me the, because he doesn't carry a sword. It's a energy. Once I was able to interface with that in that way and know that it isn't what I think it is, but there's something there that we're calling that, I was able to say, okay. And she's the one who told me Archangel Michael is showing up for you in this reading. And I was like, really? I don't really feel connected to the angels like that. I believe I have them. I believe they're there. But that made it real for me. And this leads me to iboga, which is an incredible plant medicine. And the Bwiti people, Bwiti, the Bwiti people in Gabon, Africa, are the ones who ceremonialize and ritualize the use of iboga, which is the main source of ibogaine. And it is the most dangerous and one of the most powerful psychedelics on the planet. And I hold it in my profile, but we use it in microdosing or micro journeys. It's just very intense, and it's a warrior medicine. It helps with addiction. There's so many things that it does, but it's an emancipation energy. And the Bwiti people, it's not a religion; it's a way of life. The Bwiti people they study life, and they believe that they shouldn't believe in anything. They either know it or they don't. And the reason they use iboga is because they go into those experiences to find answers for themselves. They do not listen to other shamans, teachers, and teachings. They can hold it, they listen to it, they appreciate it, but they don't take it on as a belief. And I have been this way for many years.
That's how I'm the same way.
And it's a beautiful, that's actually part of our healing and our ascension as well. For you to hear a concept and not believe it, because the belief is the ego attachment that wants to, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And so the belief actually limits you from more possibilities. So unless you have a direct experience with it in the Bwiti tradition, it's not for you, it's not part of your reality, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist and that it's not possible. It just means it's not in yours, it's not embodied there. Sure. And that's where Iboga and psychedelics really come in to the picture, because when you go into those experiences, you're going to download things in shamanic journeys, medicine experiences, that are straight from your higher self, not from someone else's higher self. They're creating their own reality. So their blue may look purple to you in your visible light spectrum. Hold that as a possibility. And many people are nervous. They get nervous around that because they don't trust themselves. How can they trust their higher selves if they don't even trust themselves?
Yeah.
So
there's the faith, right?
Yes, and that's why they have to have faith, because they just have to just believe, and many people will, because some of us have to have that direct experience because we have to embody and be the messenger.
And I think, and if you're a person who has doubt too, that's a big part of it, because this is where I get into like the psyop of the New Age community. You know, I'm not saying it's like a controlled psyop, but part of what the New Age community is that the psyop is you learn to just accept whatever you're told.
Yes.
And if you're doing that, you're just a sucker. You're just they just captured you once again. You broke out, and then they got you again, and the rubbish, coming through again.
Yes, and there, like last night, I was watching, controversial as he is, David Icke's presentation on the Saturn Moon Matrix, which I've heard for years, but I now have new eyes and I'm listening to him. And so there were a few things that rubbed me the wrong way that I didn't like, and I checked in with my higher self, and I heard, it's true. And I was like, ooh, okay. And then there were a couple things that I checked in with, and I heard, he's onto something, but it's not what he thinks it is. And so that pulled me out of needing to identify or hold any of it as total fact and truth. It's just there. And I love having options. We're just giving each other options. Just play a few notes and let's see which one resonates with me.
Absolutely. And if you're in the spiritual community and you're trying to help people get there, great, get there, but let them get there through their own higher self.
If they didn't get there through their own higher self, they're not actually there. They're just repeating your words. It's just regurgitation. And I've done it. I totally have done it. I'm an actor. I'm a regurgitator of someone else's words at times. But the best actors are the ones who can get into the channeling state and improvise and be totally in the moment, so that those words are expressed with a total genuine energy. I know the feeling of both.
You embody the spirit, sort of.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of like a method.
Archetype of the yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's there's nothing, archetypes are archetypes are built out of these haystacks of beliefs that we have about archetypes. Mm-hmm. And all of that combination of all those things, the details that make up the archetype, brings it to life. Yes. Which is why it's alive. It is alive. It lives in the psyche. It's at a different realm of psyche, but it's in there, and it's call it another dimension, but it's the psyche dimension, But Chrys, Michael, Raphael, all of them there, and they all have their components, and they all have their things to kind of guide you into where you're supposed to be,
And part of my journey is to help you understand that you are an incredibly powerful divine archetype. Quit trying to become Archangel Michael and an ascended master. You are an ascended master. If we can just get the programs off of you, if we can get the dust off of you, you are a shiny diamond. You are, okay?
Well, you can invoke that power. You can recognize what Michael stands for and invoke that power of here and no further. That's what he represents. The here, he draws the line, says here and no further.
Yes.
Because beyond this line is the spiritual realm, and you cannot bring in your human bullshit into the spiritual realm. You're going to pollute the water.
I love that everything in this room is blue, by the way, because that's his color.
You're welcome, Michael.
Yes, you're welcome, and we love you, and you are real, and we do interface with you, and they are beings, but they're also templates. There's many
Yeah.
templates for us because we can embody that template as well. That's what you're doing when you're channeling. Is you're becoming a biological receiver and becoming expressing that template through you. They're not getting into your body. It's not Patrick Swayze in Ghost. There's a resonance, a tuning fork.
Yes.
Sympathetic resonance. Yes.
He's been watching our podcast.
Yes.
No, it's so true. It's so true. There's just yes, there's that, and I don't even know why I was bringing that up, but a lot of people they find archetypes, they don't really know how to think about them.
That's a very
yeah.
It's a concept that is quite complex, and it's so simple, but it also can be made very complex. And things that are malleable like that, it's hard. It just depends on the person if they understand that. Archetypes. Myths and archetypes, we've been told that they're myths. It's not real. They're just stories. They're just made up. So we have to get past the idea that a lot of people, their ego still needs something to be fact or fiction. And it is so... We're creating our own reality. So facts are just things we're all agreeing upon.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's well said, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we're going to get into one more thing here, because this is what I really wanted to get in with you. Let's talk about nihilism.
Okay.
Because yeah, I know this is a big one for me. So, we can talk about when the psychedelic thing happened in the 60s. I think the reason we didn't bring in that utopia world is because of the nihilism, right? And which just tells me that the people weren't prepared for that kind of gnosis yet.
Right.
They didn't know how to handle it. And the nihilism is to say, nothing is real, nothing exists, so I can do whatever the hell I want.
Right.
Right. And I think that the word that's gotten very popular these days is the do what thou wilt, right? Do what thou wilt.
Yes.
And Jay-Z's made that very popular with his clothing line. He's got that whole thing which is really, we could talk about Crowley and all the disgustingness of Crowley, but Crowley was a genius too. And the thing about that line that Jay-Z is quoting, he's quoting Aleister Crowley, but he's taking the quote out of context, because the full quote is that it's that love is the law, love under will, do what thou wilt. That is a very different thing than just do what thou wilt.
Yes.
And I think the reason I bring that up is because, once again, there is this spiritual awakening happening with everybody, and then the powers that be are trying to steer that into this dark nihilism, right?
Yes.
Because they don't want you, and that's the trap. The nihilism is the trap.
Yes.
Because
and it can work. It's working.
Yeah. So the trap, yeah, absolutely. And the trap is, yes, you are source, you are God, if you will, and yes, you can do anything you want, but and it's true, yes, compassion must begin with the self more than anything else. In order for compassion to be true, it has to begin with the self.
Yes.
It's the Buddha, right?
Yes.
So, but here's the caveat. The real joy, the real unmistakable, bountiful, limitless joy comes in the service of others.
I am channeling so much right now. Sorry, my there's so much that wants to come through on this. So keep going, because I don't even know how to open this faucet.
And that sounds so cheesy, and that's not saying it in the way that the Christians say. Yeah, so it's a dance, right? So the religions have got the misnomer that the service to others, it's all about giving, being good and doing the right thing for the people. There's this whole, but it's been bastardized from the truth of it, because first you have to have compassion for the self. That is very, very true. But that alone is, again, a nihilistic thought.
Yes.
But if you can realize that the heart is a chalice, right? And the chalice of the heart is the Holy Grail. And when you fill your Holy Grail up, if you start to dispense that energy out before you fill up your cup, guess what? The cup goes down, and then you start to feel depleted. And you're like, fuck all this helping other people stuff. When people could help me?
Yes,
right?
You're talking about imbalances.
And where do you go? You go back to nihilism again.
That's right.
So what you have to do is you have to just serve yourself. Keep serving yourself, and then the cup fills up. And then what flows over the cup, what spills over the Holy Grail, is what you dispense, and you give as much of that away as you possibly can, and that is the service to others without depleting the self.
Yes.
And who needs nihilism? Fuck nihilism, because I can be beautiful and bountiful and loving and awesome and have a full cup all the time.
Yes, and you get to have it all.
Yes, and it's the best of both worlds.
That's right. And the nihilists are it's driven by ego and it's driven by density.
Sure.
That's how you know the difference. It's like I've had nihilistic thoughts my whole life, you know, like where it could have gone further than what it did. And, you know, the idea that nothing's real anyway, well, you're onto something there. It's just your perception of it. It is as simple. It's as simple as seeing the glass half empty or half full. It's as simple as that. And what I really want to say about that is it's like music. Frequencies, it's coherence. Frequencies are the frequencies that they are. But frequencies love to harmonize and are dissonant from each other. There's a dance that wants to happen. There's a resonance that happens, and you can't find resonance in just oneness. It just is. So there's a separation and then a harmonizing back again. That's the beauty. That's music. So that's why music is such an important part of our ascension process and the work that you do, because it is the language of the soul and it is the language of the heart too. Nihilism is spiritual mastery without the heart.
Without the heart, yeah.
With so much ego, because it's only me and you all are made up. Trust me, I already went through that between 11 and 17 years old, where I watched people fall off their bikes and felt nothing. That was very nihilistic because it just wasn't real. But even then, I still felt something. I was just choosing not to run over to them because I was just like, it's not real anyway. It's an illusion. So it's important because many people, and there have been lifetimes where I probably was extremely nihilistic. I've done horrible things in other lives, and I've recovered memories of it. I've also done wonderful things from my perspective, what I think is wonderful and terrible. And the idea that nothing is real, just saying it that way, it's about how you look at it. The cup is half full or half empty. It's both. It's yes and.
Two opposites coexisting at the same time.
Because it's the same thing. It's
and
just how you're perceiving. Where are you giving your attention? Yes. Are you giving your attention to the everythingness or the nothingness? Yeah. There is a different vibration there. You know, nothing and everything are the same thing. So to say everything is one and nothing is real, nothing is real can be a beautiful thing. That can mean that I don't have to take this so seriously, or it can mean there's no meaning to it. Right. You get to decide. Yes. But it's your programming, your belief systems, your personality that leans you in one of those directions. And you and I like feeling good. Yeah. And it doesn't resonate to think that nothing is real and it's meaningless. Nothing is real and that's meaningful.
Yes.
Yes. It's full. We're deciding that it's full instead of empty, because just like we say before, there's more information in between my fingers than there is in it. But you can call that full or you can call that full. It depends on how you're looking at it.
Sure.
Both are correct. People really need something to be fact or not. I used to. Now I can just be like, I don't know what that is, and I'm just going to surrender to the mystery of it. That there's a beauty to it when you trust yourself and when you surrender to the awe and the beauty and the mystery of the universe. You almost don't want it to be real or to be fact or to be set in something. I remember being told many years ago, don't ever tell a child what a bird is, because then they can't see anything else but that. Because then it's only a bird. Let them decide or create what it is. That's where words distort things, and our language distorts things, which we're moving out of too. Have you all not noticed how telepathic you are with other people and with your soulmates and with your family and friends? There's a telepathy happening there because there are versions of you that only operate in telepathy. Yeah. And telepathy is not me sending a thought to you. It means that you and I have tuned to the same station and we're downloading the same ideas and thoughts at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
Resonance,
exactly. Wow. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. This is a great place to leave it because it was so good, and we're about an hour and 40 minutes into this.
Holy shit! Really?
And yeah, something happened. Like I went, the battery was going dead, and I pushed the button, and then the audio got weird. So sorry for the last 5 minutes there, but hopefully everything was good.
That's okay. I was able to.
Yeah, but I want to thank you very much for coming and doing this talk. You live in Atlanta, so we gotta at least do this a little bit more often.
Yes,
this conversation, I could do this conversation for
me too.
For days. This is like my favorite.
This is awesome, and there'll definitely be a part 2.
Oh, for sure. So since we all know that it's going to be a part 2, I want you guys to leave a comment. I want you to ask questions for Chrys, and then when we have him back, he'll answer those questions for you.
I would love that.
It'd be awesome, right?
Yes, I would love that. I'm like one of those machines that has like that psychic oracle man in there, and he's like a robot, and you just put in a coin, and he'll answer your question for you.
The Zoltar.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I want that hat too. That's me. Just put your question in, and I'll tap into spirit if I don't already have it stored in my data bank.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chrys. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and please leave that comment, do the like, the share, the whole thing. That really, really helps. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.